So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to the quant16 team. Thank you.
Terrific. Well, thank you, Daryl, and I appreciate you setting this up. I'm going to share my screen. That's okay.
Yep.
Great. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. So today we're going to talk about model-driven fp&a. fp&a is an acronym that stands for Financial Planning and Analysis. It's one of the three major functions underneath the CFO. There's Treasury, and accounting, and then fp&a, which I think is kind of the future of finance. So it's a little bit about me. I kind of describe myself as an unemployable math misfit. I went to school, studied math. While at IBM, I wrote all the algorithms that would give salespeople signals to upgrade machines. Then I was a algorithmic trader at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. Ended up having a company that wrote financial modeling systems and started this company back in 1998. So our company I describe as a team of scientific thinker-doers that exist to help innovation-minded executives win. So we design models, write algorithms, create business cases, and develop execution roadmaps used to efficiently modernize operations. And we focus on technology, procurement, grants, and large capital programs. So I think what is different about us is that we start with the scientist because the scientist understands the connection between nature and markets. Then we have the quants that identify ways to do work more efficiently and find financial outcomes. And then we also have the designers, the architects, designers, and engineers that design and build applications. So this is the kind of the world that I came out of. The quantitative hedge funds have really taken over the financial industry. And I think the same thing is going to be happening in the rest of industry as well. So we look at model-driven fp&a as algorithmic identification of opportunities that can be executed digitally. So we say these model-driven fp&a capabilities that allow you to understand why things happen so you can predict what's likely going to happen. That allows you to identify monetizable opportunities or build business cases that you can use technology to execute digitally, measuring time to value, and then innovating to improve. So there we measure these outcomes, these financial outcomes in revenue potential, labor asset, and risk spend. So by having these capabilities, you can become what we call a quantitative lean digital enterprise. So the way that we look at the relationship between work and technology is that technology exists to make the work of delivering your services to your stakeholders more efficient. So you ought to create a modern and rationalized technology stack to help you do the work. So we focus on the Microsoft platform because it really connects the front end and the back end, and we'll be showing you that shortly. So we say, imagine having the capabilities of the quants. These are all we call quantitative lean digital enterprises that use advanced analytics to predict what's going to happen. Lean simply means the elimination of waste and work. And then lastly, digital is automation. So we say it's not the technology, it's the system of scientific thinking, algorithmic discovery, and then digital execution. So the scientific thinking and algorithmic discovery is what differentiates us and what gives actually power to the digital investments. So here are some of the challenges that we're hearing from financial executives. They need more insights faster than ever. They know they're wasting money, but just can't understand where. And they don't have good visibility on what their technology investments are delivering. So the great majority of technology initiatives fail to deliver what they promise because they're typically lined into projects that are siloed expenditures, as opposed to looking at portfolios, which is what we do. So we think the new way is quantitative lean and digital. So the old way is to pay, I would say, consulting companies for what we call pretty expensive presentations. And then you end up with a list of stuff, mostly that's not going to get implemented. And then you don't know what you own. So the new way, it's algorithmic, it's model driven, and it's the investment is outcome focused. And if you do that, then you actually end up with optimized. Okay, so we say here that these model-driven FP&A capabilities drive performance. So we look at the finance and technology are part of the shared services departments, and what they exist is to help the operational departments to deliver services to improve the way they're doing stakeholder delivery. So these FP&A capabilities, which we described, allows you to get better and more predictable financial performance. So we created something called monetizable AI. Monetizable AI has two components: ecosystem design thinking, so it allows you to see how everything in a system fits together, and then quantitative portfolio optimization, which allows you to predict business need, modernize execution capabilities, and then modernize or optimize, portfolios of labor and acquired assets. So we think in 90 days, you should be able to find opportunities in almost any organization. Because what we do is we look at, we call the flows of funds, data, and information through a system. This tells us where to look. So we can pretty easily discover opportunities in almost any system. Okay, so now we're actually going to go through a business case. So we did this work for the chief operating officer for the city of Chicago. They had hired a big consulting company to give them a modernization strategy, a digital modernization strategy. And after a year and a half and $5 million, they essentially got an org chart. So we said in 30 days, we'll give you a new architecture, which we did. We designed something called the Office of Analytics, Innovation, and Modernization, and the portal, which we're about to show you. And we identified how they could capture $1 billion of annual savings in revenue, procurement, grants, and then the capital programs. So now I'm going to shift over to the analytics portal, which is a repository of AI-enabled enterprise understanding and the identification of tracking of opportunities and investments. So I'm going to jump over to the portal now. Terrific. Daryl, can you see the portal now?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, we see.
Okay, yes, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to take a few minutes and I'm going to walk through the different sections so that you can see how things operate. So this starts off with the business cases. The idea is before you spend any money, you have to create a business case. Oh, sorry. There we go. Okay, so here we can see all of the business cases. We can see what stages they're in. We can go into a particular department, and we can actually see the return by project. Here we can look at all our risk analytics. We can look at our budgets. In this case, we look at budget by department. We can go back in time. We can project forward in time. And we can even look at things by categories. So the city of Chicago gets billions of dollars a year in grants that they have to track. So we've done a lot of grant management work. In this case, we can see what the budget is, where the money's coming from, which delegate agencies it goes to, and then even the payments that have been made. Next, we'll take a minute and we'll look at vendor spend. So here we can look at all of the vendor spend. And I should say this, the data that's used for this portal was we have market data. So we took budget data and 5 years worth of spend data, which was a simple export from the financial system. So we can see here in the vendor spend between 2017 and so far in 2024, there's about $28 billion of spend. We can even see over the next period how much money are we likely going to spend. So now let's go back and let's dive into a particular category. So this would be IT. So we can break down all of the spend, who the money was spent with. Now we can actually go, and this would be a reseller. This is one of the things that is almost impossible for people to do typically. So here we can break down the producer spend versus the reseller spend and say, how much are you actually spending with the reseller versus the producer? And what are the alternatives for saving money? We'll go into more into reseller spend shortly. So here what we can do is we can break down all the different categories so that we can identify where the efficiencies are in those different categories. And it's broken down. These are models that we create. So there's asset management, demand management, early pay, payment errors, things like vendor efficiency. So now we can go and look at what is the opportunity for the organization to save money. This allows us to go and look at the reseller spend. How much money are we spending with who for what kind of products? And then we can actually look from either from the product or from the parent company. We'll jump here into the reseller spend. So now we can break down what we actually own, looking at what the alternatives are, and then something called spend disparity. I won't spend a lot of time on that, but let's jump into the contracts now. So in this case, what we can do is we can look at all of the contracts that are in the system, and we can look at it by really any category. In this case, we're looking at IT contracts, but we could look at all the different contracts, and you could apply Copilot or AI to ask questions and say, tell me how many contracts I have with AT&T or any particular company. Here we can look at all of the debt, and we're actually projecting how much collectible versus uncollectible debt they're going to end up having over the next few years. Here we can see the buying plan. So what are they likely going to be buying over the next year? Here I'm going to jump into the technology or digital assets. So in this case, we have the applications by platform and by department. We can also look at things by groupings of departments, which are is a sector, we call it, or the different enterprise applications. Here we can see the sources of data and what applications are connected to. So what we've done here is we've broken down into the target platform. So for each level of the target platform, what platforms will we use for what type of work? And then lastly, we can go in saying for our portfolio, what are we going to invest in, maintain, and retire, and what platforms are we going to be using for what types of applications? Okay, now we're going to jump to really the connection between the digital and physical technologies. In this case, this is their capital improvement program. Here, what we have is a $11 billion program to modernize the airport. So we can actually break down all the different components of the capital improvement program, and we can identify the technology that uh, that you need for each one of those different areas. It's really important in this case to be able to track the operational technologies that are going to go into infrastructure because there is a risk of shutting down systems if you can't track that and make those connections. So here what we can do is we can break down the entire capital improvement program and we can find the efficiencies in the capital improvement program. So in this case, we've identified 3.2 billion out of the 20 billion. We can see what is the effect of inflation going to be on different parts of in the capital improvement program. And then we can look at the actual investments. In this case, the city of Chicago is broken into wards. So we can look at all the projects by wards. If I have federal grants, I can actually track those investments to the federal census tract so that I can report on them that way. Here we can look at all the different KPIs. So this would be for the water department. And in this case, we can look at you see we have 48,000 fire hydrants. So now we're going to go actually look at labor spend and we'll come back to the water department. So during this period, the city of Chicago had $2 billion of overtime. And in the water department, there was 170 million. So any financial system can tell you how much, but none can tell you why. So if you want to understand why, you have to look at the work. So in this case, what we did is we built a model that predicts which fire hydrant is going to get open when, where, and what it's going to cost. So now that we know when things are likely going to happen and why, now what can we do about it? So we said here, if we geolocate the camera and we geolocate the fire hydrant, now we can look through the camera to see what's going on with the fire hydrant. So the question is, why didn't they think of that? Well, there's two reasons. One is those assets are owned in two different places. The water department owns the fire hydrants, the emergency management owns the camera system. So they never really thought about that connection. Okay, so now I'm going to take a break and we're going to now go to process mining. So Pork, actually, can you take over the screen and we'll
Sure.
go into process mining and then I'll go back into the business cases.
Yeah,
So I'll
sounds
turn
good.
this over to Pork.
Okay. So, yeah, we should probably mention that we built this portal on the Power Platform, so it incorporates a lot of the Power Platform tools and technologies, such as Power Apps, Power Automate, Copilot. And what we've done recently is incorporate the Power Automate process mining tool into the portal. So this is a tool that allows us to analyze complex business processes. It helps us identify inefficiencies and opportunities for improvement. So what we're looking at here is the process mining tool that we've embedded in Power BI and then embedded that within our portal. But to really delve into the details of process mining, it's better to use the Power Automate process mining desktop tools. So that's what we're looking at here. So just taking an example of the grant management process, which is can be a pretty complex process. But what process mining will do is It'll let us highlight inefficiencies and look for areas of improvement. So we can see that there's several steps in the grant management process, from evaluating proposals to approving contracts, and then the voucher review and payment process. But what we do is we load the data from all of the steps and workflow events that we have in our system. We can load them into the tool, and it automatically creates this process map that will visually show us where there are areas where there are bottlenecks and potentially a lot of rework and inefficiency in the process. So that's what we're looking at here. So we can see right off the bat that our proposal evaluation process has a pretty large bottleneck. We can see the amount of time it takes on average to evaluate proposals. We can look at the mean duration or the total duration for all cases in our process. The other thing it lets us do is look at the overutilization or underutilization of resources. So, for example, we can see in cases where we use external evaluators for our grant management process, we have a very large bottleneck in our process. And then that lets us kind of delve in and figure out, okay, how can we make this process more efficient? The other nice feature that the tool gives us is process animation. So I'll speed this up just for the purpose of the demo, but you can see as the cases flow through the system, how each case is hitting each step in the process. And it really helps you identify the areas of inefficiency in the process and these loopbacks that are causing delays, in this example, of voucher approval and payment. And then you can target, whether it's staff need more training or there are systems that can be put in place that can be made more efficient. The other thing we can do is look at all of the variants of cases in our system. So we can see in cases where the process is super efficient, and we can compare those with cases that are less efficient. And using filtering, then we can drill into the different variants and try and analyze what's causing inefficiencies or bottlenecks. The other thing, is Microsoft has incorporated Copilot into a lot of their tools and platforms. So we can do things like we can say, show me areas of inefficiency in my process, and Copilot will query the data and come back with the areas that we should be targeting analysis for, making them more efficient. So let me hand it back to you, Robert.
Terrific. Thank you, Porrick. I'm going to go back and share my screen. Okay, so here. All right, so you can see my screen again?
Yeah.
So you can think about this inside the portal, a repository of all of the kind of the work processes. So you do the work in the tool, and this is a repository of the work. So now I'm going to go and show some different features of the portal, starting with an asset profile. So this would be an operational technology. So operational technologies are things that really connect physical infrastructure with digital technologies. You have to be able to look and understand what the connectivity is, because this is where a lot of risk is. So if we look at this climate control system, we want to be able to understand what other things is it connected to, so that I can understand the cascading effect of risk through the system. And I want to be able to see what my risk control measures are. So we can do, in this system, we can see all the connectivities, see how things are connected in the ecosystem. So we'll now go and look at platforms. So we'll pick ASP.NET as a platform. So here we can see what are all the solutions that are actually built on this platform. The reason why we want to know this, ultimately, all applications have to be migrated at some point or another. So in this case, where we want to see where this is built on ASP.NET, which one of these applications can be migrated to a new platform, say the Power Platform. Here we can go, and now I'm going to go and look at the business cases. So again, the idea is before you spend money, you have to create a business case. So in this case, I can see a request for money, and I have to say, why are we doing it? How much do we think it's going to cost us, and who's affected? So now what we can do is we can actually go build these business cases. So the business cases actually start with what's the return? Why are we spending the money? What's the business need, and how much, what's the value of the business need over time? So we always start with return, and that is always, is it new revenue? Is it better service quality? Is it risk, a cost reduction, or risk mitigation? So let's say that you've identified $24 million of annual savings. You make the determination that you need a $2 million investment. So the next question is, how long before we start capturing that value? If it takes you 10 months before you start capturing the value, that means you have 10 months worth of value, you have 2 months worth of value, or $4 million, minus your $2 million investment means you have return the first year of $2 million, or return on investment of $2 million. But what would happen if I could get that same outcome only 4 months faster? That my ROI actually goes up by 5 times. So it's 10 million instead of 5 million. Excuse me, it's 10 million instead of 2 million. So now what we can do is to see in this investment, we can see the initial investment or the capital investment, and we can look at the ongoing operational cost over time. So we can look at the maintenance and protective services cost over time. We can look at it at this particular investment, or we can look at it at a particular portfolio, category, or the entire organization. Again, financial systems don't do this kind of work. So lastly, let's go and look at the investment. So once I've decided I need to buy something or make an investment, I want to be able to apply lean. And applying lean, I need to know what are all the hard and soft components of cost. So in this case, if it's a digital investment, I look at delivery and support and maintenance. I look at time by phase, labor by phase, and rate by labor. So what we can do is we can go into any one of the project phases and determine where the efficiencies are. So for instance, if you've got a low code versus high code environment, that can dramatically lower your cost. If you already have a good understanding of how things operate, that will also make it efficient, a lot more efficient. So in this case, we build these efficiency models. So in this case, we showed how you could take out 49% of cost. So Pork, do you think there's anything else that I should show that I missed? You're on mute.
Yeah, I think you've covered everything.
Wonderful. Okay, Daryl, do you want to, maybe I'll turn it back over to you, and then we can respond to some questions.
Yeah,
Or I'm happy
absolutely.
to dive into something again if somebody wants to see more detail.
And I'm sorry if I missed it, but did we go into the grants piece of it? That was
Yeah,
one that I liked. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
yeah. Let's go back to. In fact, Pork, do you have
Mhm.
one of the grant applications that has a little more detail?
Uh, with some of the workflow we did.
Yeah, yeah,
Let me see.
yeah. So in this case, we're looking at the grants, where the money's coming from, where it goes, how it's allocated, and where the money's spent. We've done some other kind of more sophisticated grant management work. And we've actually done a lot of grant modernization work to make the process of delivering grants a lot more efficient and faster, so that you can identify where the administrative offsets are.
Yeah, I'm just going to grab the screen, Robert.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, so this is a Power Apps prototype we did for the City of Chicago Office of Budget and Management that managed the grant management process. So what we show them, because we did some work with the city where we identified inefficiencies in the process, we developed this prototype to show them how they could address some of those inefficiencies. So basically, we've got some synthetic data we created showing grants. So this is from the point where they um, have issued a grant, and now they've engaged with a delegate agency to provide social services normally in the community. So this lets them track the entire grant management process from start to finish. So this is, they can prepare their RFP, evaluate the RFP, work through the contract negotiation process, track all of the events associated with that. Um, the delegate agencies have to submit a budget and have that approved so we can track the budgets. And then as the delegate agency starts to perform the services and they start issuing payment vouchers, we have a process that tracks the invoicing as well. And then all of the tasks and the document checklist associated with the entire grant management process. So, what we found is, and this is the case for a lot of agencies that manage grants, is they very often try to use their system of record as a system of engagement or workflow. And very often that doesn't work. So we find the Power Apps platform very useful for quickly developing applications that handle, fairly complex workflow and document-based applications and solutions. So that's one of the areas we specialize in.
Perfect. Okay, Daryl, back to you.
Awesome. Thanks for showing this. Yeah, so I mean, we can open it up to any questions. If there's any questions, you can either type it in the chat or feel free to jump off mute and just ask the question live. So opening it up to any questions.
Okay.
Okay. So actually, I'll kick it off with a question. How how long would it take to implement something like this for, a city or a state? Looks like this is pretty built out already. It's very robust. So typically, what are we looking at for implementation time and standing this up?
So for this, we built we rolled this out in the basic framework in about 90 days. So the good thing is that the platform, it's pretty configurable, and we don't sell software. So it's really based, it's totally based on the Microsoft platform, which a lot of people have already. So it took us, it's really about 90 days, I would say, to make sure to take the data that's really just an export from the financial system and populate it. So that's what I would say. It's about 90 days to kind of have a functioning portal.
Okay, awesome. And a follow-up question. Oh, here we go. We got a question. So what are the data sources of the solution?
The data sources were really just exports from the financial system. So there are three kinds of data that are in the system. There is market data that we have. There is budget data, which typically is available because people have to produce budgets. And then there is the payment data. It can be labor or vendor spend information. So really, that's the information that we need. So on top of the data, you've got the analytics, that the models that we build that are applied in the portal. So the portal you can think as a repository of information, analytics, and system connectivity. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. And other question, are you putting all your data on something like Dataverse, or are you reading in the information live from your financial sources, or how are you reading or storing information?
In this case, it's in Dataverse. We make the connections that are necessary. Since this is not a system of record, you don't really need real-time connections. So you can do it through an API, or you can do it through some kind of scheduled export port. Do you want to touch on that? And then let's go to Samuel. I believe Samuel had a question.
Sure. Yeah. So, yeah, like Robert said, it's not critical that this data be, up to the minute. So generally, we get an extract periodically, whether it's from the financial system or payment engine. We use data flows to import the data. In the case of the city of Chicago, they have a data portal as well. So we can connect to their data portal through an API and with a data flow to load the data. Like Daryl was saying, the Power Platform now comes with hundreds and hundreds of native connectors. The fallback is you can just import from Excel or CSV files, or you can use the out-of-the-box REST HTTP REST API as well to connect to data sources.